Hi, everyone. I just want to give you a short tour of the pre-Greek civilizations, and it's like the first two chapters. Your book doesn't go in depth in anything, and it just makes me a little crazy. So before ancient Greece, which is right here, starts, it's going to talk to you about Crete, and then there's some more islands right here. Um, and then there's Mycenae or Mycenae. You can call it either way because it just depends on which country is speaking. And so here, Mycenae or Mycenae, Crete. And then there is the Cyclades, which are somewhere here. This looks like an older um, um, PowerPoint for me, but cycladic art is one of them, and your book doesn't mention. And it's pretty cool because we get abstract art here. And so we get these, and these images are, some of them are 4 feet long, some of them are smaller. They're usually laying on top of graves. They're always women. And it's just kind of the first time we see abstract art in these ancient civilizations, and it's very cool. And we can see how they, yeah, I'm not turning my camera on because I look terrible, by the way. But we can see Neolithic. We can see how they kind of change through the different ages. And we'll see some a little bit later. You'll see this one, the one we're just looking at. And this is kind of cool how they did it because this is kind of how, if you've taken a drawing class, you'll see that they still draw like this. They still teach how to draw like this. We call her the Suros woman, found in Graves abstract, and she was originally painted. She would have even had a necklace on. Most ancient art was painted, even the Greek art. And this I love. This is the lyre player. It's like a small harp sitting in a chair. So we know kind of like what their chairs look like and the harp. It's very, very cool. And we can see that, they were having fun. They had different things. And some of these are much smaller, but this is in Athens. It's cool. I just wanted to bring that out. We're not going to too much into it. Minoan art, Minoan civilization is 2000 before the Common Era, not 200, on the island of Crete. The largest island of the Greek islands is right here. And it was just cool. Here it is today. It's a wonderful island to vacation in, or if you could afford to live there. It's the largest island, 155 miles long, 36 miles wide. Ignore the not on notes thing. It's very beautiful. Look at that clear water. And they were pretty cool. They had trade routes. They imported alabaster ivory metals from Cyprus, Spain, and Egypt. They exported pottery, oil, metalwork, and cloth to Italy, Greece, and the Eastern Mediterranean. So you can see that very important. So it's like a trade hub. Okay, so it's great because they're trading, they're making money. Now, if you get into a war with somebody, you just stop the trade. You can see, look, here's Jaffa, Jerusalem, Tyre. Here's the Euphrates, which we just did. Here's Troy, which is where the Trojan War is going to take place between the Mycenae, or the Mycenaeans, and the Trojans. And this is where the epic of the Trojan War or the Trojan horse comes from. There's Athens. Um, the Minoans had a language. One of them has been deciphered and one has not. Pretty cool. And they had this gigantic place that we called a palace, and it had different phases when it was built. And now we know it was much more than a palace. It was kind of a whole different thing of apartments for the kings and office buildings and things like that. But it was very cool. And it's probably where the myth of the Minotaur comes from, where the idea that Minos, where the Minoan comes from, and it's always about the woman. They say that the woman had sex with a beast, a bull, and had a son that was half Minotaur. And if you like Greek myths, there's this thing, and I think it's on Prime. I think it's if you have Prime, Amazon Prime, you can watch it free. And they kind of talk about different myths, and they show pictures and stuff, and you'll be shocked at how um, cruel some of those myths are. But it talks about this, and of course, the Minotaur is killed horribly and treated very badly. But we think this is where it's from. And it looks like a maze almost, like how could you get out? And here it's from above the ground, and here you can see it on the side. But very cool. It just kills me that we only have, one chapter of this. And they've dug this out. That's the cool thing is that they've dug it out. We can still see it. It's uncovered in 1900 the Common Era. The old period ended in 1600. The new palace is the late Minoans, golden age of Crete, powerful and rich. But it's not a palace. It's a place for ceremony, but it's a whole bunch of things. It was a key administrative, commercial, and religious center. Sort of like everywhere they went, everything they needed was there. Everything else would have been like farms and where people lived. You can see they had columns and piers that we're going to see later in Greek and everything. This from here, it's actually the same thing here. And these are going to be abstracted bull's horns. Bulls are fertile. They're always going to be a symbol of strength. See, they had frescoes that they painted, and these were buried at one time, so that's why they lasted. So we can still see them. Here's some painted columns, which are very cool. You can still see some of the painting in here because it was buried. This is stacking and piling with the post and lintel and the columns. Very cool. This is a Red Bull, which I just love because it reminds me of Red Bull. One of my students told me he drank 4 Red Bulls once, and I said, "What happened?" He said, "I threw up." Yeah, I bet. There he is again. This house with a double axe was with the head, and they had double axes here. You can see some of them here. They're very cool. And this is a dolphin scene. It's really cool. Dolphins have always been friends of man. I just read something that said during COVID, dolphins would bring gifts up to the shore because they hadn't seen humans in a while. It was usually coral reef that they'd bring up. You can see the dolphins. There are many different kinds of dolphins, so this is the ones they had. Um, Island countries are very aware they're by the ocean and they really interact with the ocean a lot. You can see they kind of redecorated it before they had the swirls and they were putting flowers over them. This is a different color, but the real color was the one we saw before, but this is kind of cool. This is called the spring room. These are mounds of earth with flowers coming out of them. And this is, when they found this, they called it the Parisians, which of course they're not. But you can see 2 people, which I believe are women, in a carriage, in a chariot. Here's the wheel. And they're just sort of going, we can see the hairstyle and that side eye. And this is, so since the cave people, um, or prehistoric man who painted on walls, I should say, they always use this complex pose or twisted perspective, where you could see the front of the eye, the whole eye, but just the side of the face. And they did that with animals mostly. And we see that all the way through. And we tend to think of it as an Egyptian pose, but it was long, long before the Egyptians, and they still use it now. And here's a dancer. He's kind of worn out. Looks almost like a disease, but it's just the wall. And here's an artist's rendition of what one of rooms looks like. It's getting kind of digitally. And the bull is always going to be a symbol for them. It's a very beautiful kind of thing there. Minos and the Minotaur, you can see all of these. Here she's nursing him. Here he's being killed, horribly tortured. Very, very, very. Most of the old Greek tales can be quite vicious. This is in your text. It's interesting. They want to call her a priestess and thing, but she's so controversial because they found the body, and the guy who found it just glued this head on, and we don't know if it's a real head. But we see images like this on their frescoes, on their wall paintings too, where she has a very low cut shirt on where her breasts are exposed and her nipples are usually painted red because of nurturing. It's nurturing. Breasts were meant to nurture. And I don't know if these arms were on there or not, so we don't know exactly what she looked like, but he just decided to glue her together, which you never do. Here's one of the wall paintings where she looks just like that and her breasts are bare. Women throughout history have always been painted as lighter as men. Oh, she's obviously important, but we don't know if she's a priestess or what she is. And here they are having fun, and you have 2 women at the ends and a man, and they're jumping bulls. One of the women are actually holding him, the bull steady, and the man's jumping over it. Very cool. So they had fun. And here she is again, and she's like holding some box. She got that full frontal eye, but that side face, and her feet look like, very cool. And here's one. I tend to like this. I like her earrings. She's on the island now called Santorini, was a Minoan outpost. An uncovered house was found full of frescoes, and frescoes are when you paint on plaster and with plaster. That showed a young woman performing initiation ceremonies Here we see an elegant linear drawing filled with color and pattern. And I like that. I love the pattern. This is my favorite thing from the Minoans. It's a octopus flask. It's a relationship between the decoration and the vessel. Like the octopus looks like he's grabbing the vessel. And I love his eyes because he looks almost cartoonish. You can tell it's been broken many times, but he looks like he's on it, but he's grabbing it. It's a dark against light and it's very dynamic. Not my word, theirs. Then here's a museum that has some of these in there. You can see another octopus, but not as cool as the last one. You can see the dancer here, but he's not the real one because he's been fixed. And some vessels and things. And this looks like an animal riding on a horse, which I just get the biggest kick out of. Another vessel. You can't see that very well. There you can see it up close there. Can't remember what it is though. And then Mycenaean civilization, 1600 to 1100 for the Common Era. And it's the only one on mainland Greece. And it's right here. And look, it's right by Sparta. Here's Corinth, Athens, Thebes, Delphi. You can call it Delphi or Delphi. Don't worry about it. Mount Olympus. Here's the Aegean Sea, and here's Troy. And it evolved on the Greek mainland and eventually conquered the Greek mainland and Crete. Mycenaean civilization were warriors. They dominated the Aegean from 1400 before the Common Era to 1200 for the Common Era. They absorbed Egyptian and Mesopotamian influences and passed them on to the Greeks. And they're interesting. They're kind of the first. And the thing about them is the Mycenaeans and the rest of the people in what we call Greece today all spoke an early version of the Greek language. And they had that in common. They were great metal workers. They had fortified strongholds, like they could protect themselves, like walled kind of inner cities for the royalty, the kings. They were on the mainland and they flourished, which I already said. There's kind of this was sort of their territory when they got going on there. They could protect it. And you see all these different things. Here's the Cyclades. Tell us, where's the Naxos and what's the other one? There's another thing in here that's just a great place to have vacation. Not that I would know, but I've been told, let's put it that way. Here's one of the things they built, and it's so gigantic. This is called post and lintel. These are the posts, and that's the lintel. This is called the Lion's Gate. Unfortunately, the lion's heads have broken off. So it's really cool. You can see how big it is for the people going through. And then this is called, I thought I had another picture. It's called Cyclopean architecture because they didn't think people did it. They thought the Cyclops, the giant Cyclops, was when I built it. And even today, they'll use that name for large architecture. They'll call it Cyclopean. Every time I move my mouse, it moves the thing. Sorry. Oh, there it is. There's the other picture. So they call this Cyclopean. Even the stacking and piling are huge with the stones. So here's a nice drawing of what it would have looked like. Here's the fortified stronghold where you could go in for safety. It's a cult center, a grave center, the Lion's Gate's right there, a citadel, safety, and some homes. And if you were under siege or something, you could go inside. This is a treasure of Atreus. It's a beehive-shaped mound outside the citadel, covered with a mound of earth. So here's the mound, but you still kind of knew that it was there. You'd have this long walk in, and here's to be buried, and there'd be a bunch of stuff in there. Of course, most of it was stolen. Atreus is Agamemnon and Menelaus' father. Agamemnon was the king of Mycenae. Menelaus was his brother. Menelaus is married to Helen. Helen is going to run away with Paris. Paris is from Troy, and Helen becomes Helen of Troy. And this is where it starts. A dromos is a passage through the doorway. It's a relieving triangle used to have engaged columns, burial chamber, and a grave was empty. Looks like this inside. But they find gold. They're great metal workers, and they work with gold. And this gold is very flat, very thin. So they're going to put it on the back of something. They're going to put it on wood or something. This might be a bracelet. This is called a rhyton or a cup. And I love this. We had a fake one at another school. The little round things on his nose are very cute. This is an abstract face mask of the king, the person that was there. And they used to call it Agamemnon, but we have no proof it was Agamemnon. They just want to think it that way because we knew he was there. The funerary mask of a bearded man is called repose, and repose means you hammered and pushed the mask from a single sheet of gold. Here's that writing again. You can see little circles of the lion right there. And here's a sword, uh, a knife, which would have been connected to something. And you have lions chasing the deer. And the opposite side, I don't have. Pooh. Well, it says bronze dagger blades inlaid with gold, silver, and the yellow, which is a black metallic alloy, shows wealth in war. One side hunters attacking a lion, other side lions attacking a deer. Has Minoan influences and figures, which I don't understand. Subject borrowed from Egypt and Mesopotamia, which I also don't understand, but that's what it says. Here's a cup. We got to fake one of these too. You have another um, bull there, and face off bronze ages of the foe. So here's that. And Helena of Troy runs away with Paris and supposedly starts this war. And here's where the ships go to Troy. And there's an old movie from 2014, which Brad Pitt was in, and it was a really good movie. But they didn't have the gods come in. When they used to make these movies, they had the gods interfere. So all the teachers who ever taught mythology hated it, and I loved it. I thought it was really good. If you've ever read um, the Odyssey, which a lot of you have. So the Troy is the Iliad. If you've read the Iliad, it's about the Trojan War. And if you've read the Odyssey, it's about coming home. And Odysseus was in the Trojan War, and he's from Ithaca, and you can see Ithaca right there. And these are great. And if you read it in high school or that, you have to read it again because all the good stuff's in the older people stuff. Um, it's very, very good. And what else was I going to say? I've just forgotten. But this is where it starts, right here. And the thing about the Iliad is it's very important because everybody could read it. They all spoke the same language. And they didn't read, of course, it was an epic. It was told as a tale. And you would have people would recite it, and that's how you were entertained. So everybody in Greek could understand the same language. And that tale alone united them, and it gave them this warrior type ideal. You would want to be like Achilles. Okay. And that united them. So here's Troy, and Troy really went through a number of different um, eras. So there'd be a city, and then you could, move that, and you'd see the older city. See right here, it's very cool. And we just don't have time to go through it all, but it's fun. This guy's Henry Schliemann. He discovered Troy, and he kind of proved that Troy was really there and found some things. Look at that coat, it's amazing. Found some things like the jewelry his wife is wearing that, hey, maybe this is the Troy. Maybe it did happen. Maybe it wasn't all fiction. So it's pretty cool, the gold. And this is a new museum that they have to put some of this stuff in. One of the warriors' um, hats. There's the Iliad. You can see the Greek horse and all these other things. But we don't have to go through that. I wish we could. Nothing I love more. Hope this helps.